Me, 27 male. Fiancé, 26 female. Call her Lacey. My father, 52 male. Call him Brian. My mother, 50 female. Call her Rachel. Like many who have had something like this happen, I never thought something like this would happen to me, but here we are. I have never used Reddit, but I have seen stories from here on TikTok, so I thought I'd give this a shot for any advice you all could give me. From listening to some other stories, you all like the backstory. I will try to be clear and precise as I can, but it's only been a week, so if I start to lose it during the telling of this story, I am sorry. Lacey and I met in her freshman year of college. We were both in the dorm, in the same building where we eventually met. We later found out we lived 2 towns away from each other, so whenever we went home, I let her drive with me. It only added like 20 minutes, so it was no big deal. After multiple trips and hanging out at school, we started to date. I have a close-knit family, as did she, so we told our families right away. I have met her plenty of times when dropping her off, but it was nothing more than an introduction and exchanging pleasantries. Both of our families accepted each other with open arms, and our relationship grew. I was a year ahead of her, so when I graduated, I went home, where I was offered a good job and great pay. I visited her whenever I get the chance, and whenever I came home, we would make time for each other. After she graduated, she moved in with me, as both of our jobs were in the same city where we grew up. Like me, she was offered a position at the company she works at now, with great pay. After living together for about 3 years, I proposed, and we have been planning our wedding since. Now, on to the parts you all are reading for. Looking back, there were plenty of things I overlooked that I just wrote off, thinking my father was just trying to welcome my ex into our family. Things like my father calling her all the time, and if I was around, they would just tell me they were talking about the upcoming family party or something along those lines. One time, Lacey was in the shower and her phone rang. I seen it was my dad, so I answered. When he realized it was me, he sounded both upset and surprised that I picked up. I then asked what was up. He responded that he wanted to talk to Lacey about my mother's birthday that was in a week, and after a minute, we ended the call. Even typing this out, I feel like an idiot for not seeing it sooner. On the day I found out, it was like any other day. Lacey had Thursday off, so she made breakfast for both of us. When I set out for work, she gave me a kiss and told me to have a great day. During my drive to work, I realized I had forgotten some paperwork I would need for a meeting I had at 3 p.m. I shrugged it off and told myself I would just go home at lunch to get it. Lacey texted me throughout the day, talking about all the casual stuff a couple talks about, like what do you want for dinner? I did the laundry. Do you want me to hang it up for you? Blah, blah, blah. I didn't think it's necessary to text her. I was coming home for lunch, so when it came around, I just left work and went home. When I got home, I noticed a car that looked like my father's in our parking lot, but I didn't think anything of it and just parked and went into our building. When I opened the door, I was met with a scene of a movie where a man comes home early and catches his spouse cheating. Such a cliche. There was a trail of clothes, both his and hers, leading to my bedroom, and the sound of faint moan echoed through my apartment. I stood at the door in utter shock. My brain was a mix of rage, sadness, and disgust. But if you were a fly on the wall, you would see what looked like a statue. I just couldn't move. When I finally snapped out of it, not knowing how much time had passed, I took out my phone to record. I picked up all the clothes that were on the floor and threw them into the hall of the building. After I filmed the walk to my bedroom, the door was opened. I stood in the doorway, filming for about a minute, then flipped on the lights. They both jumped at the sudden light and looked at me, and to my utter shock, it was my father in the bed with her. After the initial stun, my father noticed I was recording and started to panic, trying to find anything to cover himself and telling me to stop recording. He found a towel and wrapped it around himself and started to walk towards me. I told him if you don't want to get hurt, stop coming to me. He either didn't care or didn't hear me and reached for my phone. I hit him square on the jaw. His head bounced on the door and slumped to the ground. Lacey shrieked. I aimed the camera at Lacey and said, concerned about your F-buddy? Nothing to say to your fiancé? My father woke up about a minute's nap and I told him I just needed to pick something up for work. so I'm heading back now. If either of you piece of SHT are here when I get back, I will send this video to everyone you know. I ended the video by looking at my dad, who was still coming to, and said, "You are dead to me. You are no longer my father, but you might want to come home and talk to mom because I will be talking to her very soon." I sat in my car for a while until one of the boss at work called to ask me where I was. I told her I was on my way back right now. When I got to her office to hand her the paperwork, I must have looked awful because she started asking me what was wrong with me. I told her it was nothing and I would be okay. I could see her scanning me up and down, and she noticed some blood on my collar and stood up, rushed to me and said, "You are bleeding." I looked down and said it was my father's. She looked confused, so I pulled out my phone and showed her the video. She watched it in its entirety. She was introduced to Lacey a few times, but never to my father. She sat there silently for a moment until it finally clicked that my fiancée was cheating on me, but not only was she cheating with my father. She asked if there was anything she could do, suggesting I take some time off, but I told her I can't go back there right now, but I just need a minute and I'll be fine for the meeting, and I have another shirt in my office. The meeting went over fine. I put on a smile for everyone like nothing had happened. My boss came up to me after the meeting and asked how I could do that, but I just said I don't know and went to my office. I then came home and I was alone for the first time in a very long time. Thank you for reading. I am sorry I carried on too much, but it was therapeutic getting everything down. I just don't know what to do. I definitely need to get the hell out of this apartment. I just can't live here anymore, and there's no way I'm sleeping in that bed. I know, not only do I have to get checked out for STD, but I think I broke another thing in my hand. Whoa, hello everyone. I didn't expect to come back to Reddit and have this much support. I didn't really plan to update at all. I just wanted to put what happened out there and hopefully get some advice. After I wrote down all that happened, I closed my computer and kind of fell into depression. After I posted, it hits me like a train. To the ones who think it's fake, I wish I was this creative. I would write books instead of a 9-to-5. I would try to reply more on this post. I just logged back on, and it was honestly too much to try to reply to every comment. Just know I read through most of them, and I truly appreciate everyone's input, both negative and positive. So the day after I posted, I tried to get into contact with my mother, but none of my calls were connected. I wanted to see if she could get lunch with me, and I would tell her everything. After about a dozen tries, I decided to get into my car and go to my mother's house. She needed to know what happened as soon as possible, even if talking about it was going to make it hurt all over again. During the drive, I thought about what I would say and how I would say it. That made me to start panic, and I had to pull over twice to throw up. It's not every day you have to tell your mom that her husband is screwing your fiancé. I pulled into the driveway and sat in my car for a moment to calm down and gather my thoughts. I was in my car for a few minutes when my mother threw her front door open, so I stepped out of my car. She started cussing at me, saying how dare I come to her home after I hit my father for trying to break up a fight between Lacey and me. She called me every name in the book and called me an abuser. She told me I needed to leave since Lacey isn't ready to forgive me yet, and that if she's smart, she hopefully never will. Yes, apparently, my father took Lacey to my family's home and told my mom that Lacey and I argued, and when my father tried to spot in, I hate him. She continued on for a while until I finally snapped and said, "Really, Mom? Because your husband is effing my fiancé. That's why I hate him. And if you can't take my word for it, I have a video I will send to you. But because my own mother can talk to me like this, don't expect to see me again. I don't want to hear your apology when you finally figure out that you're just a SHT of a mom, as my piece of SHT father." Her face dropped, and she looked like what I must have looked like when I first walked into my apartment and caught them. I pulled out my phone and sent her the video. My mom took hers out and turned it on. She pulled up the video and watched it until the part where I turned on the lights. She then put her phone down and she looked up at me, but I turned and went into my car. I backed out of the driveway. I looked at her before I took off, and she was in tears. My heart fell for her, but too much was said during the fight for me to pull back in and forgive her. When I got home, I started clearing everything out of my apartment that had to do with Lacey and my family, or my family. I boxed all of Lacey's things up and put them next to the front door. Legally, this has been her place of residence, so I can't technically kick her out. Her name isn't on the lease. Also, she's the type of person who shies away from conflict, and if she returns, other than to pick her things up, there will be plenty of conflict. Anything that had to do with my parents, I boxed up and put into storage. Like I said in my first post, we were a very close family, but I never had a problem cutting toxic people out of my life. I texted Lacey's parents and told them to call off the engagement and told them she had been cheating on me. I thanked them for everything they have done for me. Our relationship was still building, but they were kind and supportive of me. So this just added more hurt to the mix. I finished by asking if they would come to pick up all her belongings. I haven't gotten a response from them yet, but I'm hoping they come grab her things so Lacey doesn't have a reason to come back here. Thank you very much for staying to the end of this video, and also please hit the thumbs up. Thank you and have a wonderful day.